KCAA.
Thank you for tuning in for this edition of Justice Watch with Attorney Zulu Ali. I am Attorney Zulu Ali with the Justice Watch crew. Rosa Nunez, Michael Bilal Clark, Dr. Akil Bashir, and Andrea Rodelman. This week, like every week, we'll be discussing critical legal and social justice issues that are impacting our communities. This week, we'll be discussing, are Black people punished for challenging the justice system? So I guess the first thing, let me do a little defining. When I speak of wrongful conviction, I think that's obvious that I'm speaking about individuals who basically were completely innocent of what they were charged with. What I'm also going to talk about is another issue that we very seldom talk about, and that is a wrong charge. So in other words, when I talk about wrong charge, I'm saying that oftentimes, prosecutors stack the deck on people who are accused of crimes, and oftentimes people choose to, plead guilty to a charge that they may have done something that may be deemed wrongful, but oftentimes people plead guilty to charges that are excessive for the conduct. So I call that wrong charge. Mm-hmm. And so, first of all, I want to talk a little bit about the statistics. So, race is the deciding factor as to whether you're deemed innocent in a court of law. African Americans are only 13% of the American population, but a majority of innocent defendants wrongfully convicted of crimes and later exonerated. For murders, researchers have found not just that Black people were more likely than white people to be wrongfully convicted, but that innocent Black people spend time before they're exonerated. Innocent Black people are about 7 times more likely to be convicted of murder than innocent white people. African American imprisoned for murder are more likely to be innocent if they were convicted of killing a white victim. 15% of murders by African Americans have white victims, but 31% of innocent African American murder exonerees were convicted of killing white people. So when we start talking about numbers, I mean, the numbers are really as high as, for example, in sexual assaults, we're talking about 3.5 more times likely. Innocent Black people are 3.5 more times likely to be convicted than white. 12 times if it's drug-related charges, and of course we said 7 times more likely when it comes to the conviction of murders. And it's in all the studies, it's almost impossible to determine exactly how many of the over 2 million people that are actually in prison are actually wrongfully convicted. It's impossible to get that story or to get that an accurate number. We're talking anywhere from 1%. I've even seen some say as high as 20%. So we really don't know exactly what the numbers exactly are, because it's you just don't know. If they're there and they're innocent, it's very unlikely that we're ever going to find out, right? Mm-hmm. So I want to kind of go into trying to explain to people the way this actually works, right? I think a lot of times, we kind of don't get an idea. And even when you're in the midst of it, it becomes extremely difficult to understand exactly, what's happening around you. So I'm going to use this example. Let's just assume that a woman took her boyfriend's phone, right? Or let's just say that she had a phone and he was using that. Let's just say the phone was in her name. And let's just say he goes to the girlfriend and demand the phone back. You with me? Mm-hmm. And then just say she refuses and he takes the phone. They commence to fight over the phone, uh, but he ultimately, gets the phone back. So he takes the phone. She's fighting over the phone. She goes out. She just goes crazy on him. She calls the police and she makes a report. And she might even add the boyfriend told her not to call the police. Right? You got that? So I'm going to go back over that scenario so we can understand it. Boyfriend goes to girlfriend and says that he wants his phone back. She's upset with him for whatever reason it is. She won't give him the phone back. Let's just assume the phone is in his name, is in her name, or maybe in her mother's name, somebody else's name. He has the phone. He pays the bill. That's his phone. He gets the phone back from her. He takes it from her. Then, as he's taking the phone from her, and let's just say he's trying to leave, she jumps on him and she tries to get the phone back. So she's hitting him, scratching, scraping, whatever. Then as he leaves, she calls the police and she makes a report and basically tells the police, whether on the phone or when they get there, that he told her not to call the police. Now, what are the things that he's going to be charged with? That first of all, he took the phone from her, so that's going to be a robbery. He's got domestic violence. He told her, oftentimes, depending on what the conversation is, it's always going to be slanted, so you can get to criminal threats. Then we get to him saying that he told me not to call the police. So then you got to dissuading a witness. So you have a significant number of acts within that particular incident that carries a very large number of time in prison. A couple of those are actually strikes. So this is where he's at. So now you get arrested, you get charged with robbery, domestic violence, criminal threats, and dissuading a witness. And so the DA offers you a domestic violence deal. He says, look, I'll give you a domestic violence deal if you take, 2 years, right? You've been there for, let's just say, 4 to 6 months. You go ahead and you take the 2 years, you split it in half. You got to do another 6 months in jail because they tell you that if you don't take that offer, they're going to increase it on you. The offer is going to go up, right, before you go to what is called the probable cause hearing, which is technically what we refer to as the preliminary hearing, right? And so, if the person chooses to exercise their rights and go forward with a preliminary hearing, oftentimes, and likely, you're going to be held to answer because the threshold of a preliminary hearing is very low, and oftentimes you may find yourself on a fast track of going to a trial if you don't take the offer right before a preliminary hearing or right at preliminary hearing. So now what you got, you're on the other side of the preliminary hearing, and oftentimes it goes from the 2 years. Then sometimes after the preliminary hearing, they might even add more charges to you, and now you're looking at even more. So, that's the way the system really works, right? When you challenge the system, oftentimes, or generally, the issue is it's going to cost you more for challenging the system. So the whole idea of actually being in the criminal justice system and just actually being, charged and generally overcharged is the way that they get you in this process. And when you challenge the system, then they're going to make you pay for challenging the system. Also, what happens is that once you get into the system and you begin to start dealing with issues of trying to take responsibility for what you've done. So now, let's just say you do go to prison for something, and let's just say you're going up for parole. And let's just say the whole time that whatever you're charged with, you never did what you're being charged with. However, if you go into the parole board and you tell the parole board that you did not do what they are alleging that you was actually innocent, what's going to happen?
They're going to get denied.
Because regardless of whether you're in the wrong or right you to basically cow down, and they want you to take responsibility for what you're being accused of. Now, this is a very serious issue, and it's an issue that when we're trying to address the issues within the criminal justice system, we very rarely address that issue. There's a huge disconnect between the perception of what happens in the justice system, of what happens and what really happens, of what you think is going to happen. And I think that once someone finds themselves in the whirlwind of the criminal justice system, whether they are wrongfully accused or they ultimately get charged with less than what they're actually supposed to be charged with, that's where we are, and we very seldom address the issue with regards to how we deal with it. The reason why oftentimes I believe that we aren't prepared for it, and oftentimes, we're very seldom do people explain the way it works. It's troubling to me, because we really don't let them know this is really how this system works. And if you challenge the system, then basically they're going to make you pay for it. And that's the way that it works. You need to take this deal. So it becomes a system of taking deals, and prosecutors use their leverage in order to make you or coerce you into taking, oftentimes not, whether it's something that you didn't do, or in many cases wanting you to plead guilty to things that you actually didn't do by overcharging you, stacking, as we call stacking charges against you. But anyway, we're gonna...
Great idea for a radio show, but have no idea where to start? Or have you been hosting a podcast for a while and want to take it to the next level? If so, you need the Gab Radio Network. To host a show on the Gab Radio Network, all you need is your voice, and we'll handle the rest, from technical engineering to full-service audio production and much more. Every show on the Gab Radio Network can be heard on our station on the TuneIn Radio app. Plus, we put all of our shows on our satellite, which is accessed by over 5,500 stations. And here's the best part. You can host from anywhere you want. There are many means to connect to the Gab Radio Network remotely, and our staff of highly trained engineers and producers will make you sound like you're right here in studio. So, if you want to be on the Gab Radio Network, the same network that hosts the Small Business Advocate, Radio MD, and the Federalist, send an email right now to sales@gabradionetwork.com. That's sales@gabradionetwork.com.
Nubian Pictures presents a CCM Films production documentary titled Purpose and Freedom. Keep your hand on the plow. This emotional and strong documentary tells the story of African-American lawyer Zulu Ali seeking justice and his purpose as a lawyer, while crossing paths with Araceli, an undocumented immigrant from Mexico who is seeking her freedom. Together, they help discover their purpose and freedom in each other. Watch this incredible film today from iTunes Movies, YouTube Movies, Amazon Prime, and Google Play Movies. Learn about the cast and crew, links to purchase, and more at purposeandfreedommovie.com. Purpose and Freedom. Keep your hand on the plow. Available now. Rated G.
I did not feel safe. That's why I decided to come to California, because I didn't feel safe in Mexico.
It's kind of like the system, and if you go outside the system, then it becomes a struggle.
Are you an immigrant seeking defense representation and are looking to protect your rights? Or maybe someone who is experiencing an injustice or discrimination and need a lawyer you can trust? Well, that's exactly why you need the help of award-winning trial lawyer Zulu Ali. The law offices of Zulu Ali provides immigration defense representation for those seeking justice and looking to protect their rights. If you or a loved one needs professional legal advice and representation, then contact Zulu Ali. Zulu Ali's firm focuses on criminal law, family law, civil and personal injury, and international law. Zulu Ali is a former police officer and U.S. Marine, so you know you're in good hands. In all of California, statewide, victims and suspects of international criminal crime. Call Zulu Ali today at 888-682-3049 or visit ZuluAliLaw.com.
Welcome back to Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali and the Justice Watch crew. We're continuing with our discussion, Are Black people punished for challenging the justice system? And before we went to the break, we went over a scenario as to how the system basically generally overcharges African Americans. I think it's an overall process. I think that they do that in general. However, you see it's more prevalent within for African Americans who find themselves in the justice system. And I just want to emphasize, enough because I think that we have a very skewed and unrealistic idea about how the justice system works. And on a daily basis, as I speak to people within our community who are, being arrested by police and being charged with oftentimes what I believe to be very, frivolous things. And in many cases, these are issues where individuals have just made, mistakes, and sometimes the mistakes that they made may not necessarily be intentional. I'll give you an example. Recently, about a month ago, I had a situation where a district attorney had sent a text and made an offer of 2 years to my client. My client actually took those 2 years. He said, I want to go ahead, Zulu, and I want to take those 2 years. Well, 2 or 3 days later, the district attorney sent another text message and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. It's not 2 years. I meant to type 3 years."
Wow.
So, so we go in and we talk to the judge, and as I'm explaining to the judge, that's, I think that's inappropriate. We're talking to, they said 2 years, and they're coming up, with this whole 3-year thing. And her response was, "I made a mistake." And so, so what do you expect should happen when you make a mistake of that magnitude, when you're talking about a year of a person's life? See, it just goes to show you that, and we've done many shows about why, I believe that the judicial system and the criminal justice system is unfairly targets African American people and unfair to them. But it also goes to show you how the narrative changes when the shoe is on the other foot. When the person, 90% of the time, when individuals have an issue or make a mistake, it's really the result, in many cases, of them just making a bonehead mistake. The unfairness comes when certain individuals are given opportunities, when it comes to punishment or when it comes to plea deals, as opposed to African Americans. I cannot emphasize enough how unfair our criminal justice system is. Extreme. I cannot emphasize enough how often Black people are targeted, and the way oftentimes being in courtrooms can often be, you almost feel like you go back to slave times. The manner in which they try to castrate people. And oftentimes when you see individuals, we saw the statistics of when the person happens to be Black and the victim happens to be non-Black, how you're more likely to be not innocent. I mean, it's just there's so much going on right now, and it's like, are we ever? And the criticism that I have a huge criticism for the criminal justice system, and we talk about this every week. But I have just as much of a problem, and I have just as much disappointment let me go back and say this. And I want to tell this story because I think this story puts it in perspective, and then I'm just going to let the crew kind of chime in a little bit as to how I feel about all of this. I can tell you that there's always this narrative that black people come from a certain background and that they come from certain, they come from the streets, and we have our own idea of what it's like to be black, right? I'll be the first one to tell you that I never was on the streets. I never missed a meal. I never had any issues. I was never a gang. I never had to fight for survival. I never knew what it was like to wake up and not have no place to live or not have anything to eat. That wasn't, that's not my history. That's not the history of many black people in America. That presumption is just not true. And we always trying to check each other's black card when it comes to that. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. But what I can say is coming from, although I was in a single parent household, I was raised in a single parent household, as I progressed through life, I was someone who very much bought into the American system of justice. But what I can tell you is, it's so much so that I committed the majority of my adult life to serving the American system of justice, both as a U.S. Marine and serving as a police officer. So, I'm not just here behind the mic talking about something that I don't know about. I put in and I pay my dues more than, at least in my mind, as much as anybody else. But this is what I can tell you. I'm extremely disappointed in my country. Yes. I'm extremely disappointed in the way that they treat black folks. I feel like we have not made no progress. And when someone sits here and they say, we're always throwing out the race card, we need to forget about it. I'm sick and tired of that, because we live in a country that all we do is memorialize our history. If you don't want to talk about history, stop teaching it in schools. Take down the Confederate flag, take down the American flag, teach history, take down these Confederate symbols, take away all the symbols that we have. I don't know why we have all these symbols in America when the only consistent symbol that we should have in America, and the only consistent value that we've had in America, is the oppression of black people. That's the most consistent thing that we've had from the very beginning to today. That's never changed.
True.
And I'm extremely disappointed in my country. But I'm also really disappointed oftentimes in my people. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I'm disappointed in my people is because, we tend to consistently stay on this narrative of indulging in things that are of no value to us as a people and to us in our progress. Yes. Mm-hmm. The things that we consider, it's like all we do is spend as much time, we got people beefing over frivolous things. Yes. And we can't unite the people because we're always competing with each other and, trying to be the overseer. You know what I mean? You don't want, if you make up your mind, if you want to stay on the plantation or you want to get off the plantation. If you want to stay on the plantation and fight to be an overseer, that's fine. But there's nothing that the legislature is going to do. There's nothing that these politicians are going to do for you. There's nothing any of these individuals are going to do. Is that now, as we speak, until we get to a situation where we begin to start respecting each other, then ain't nobody going to respect us. And we need to change that. I talked longer on that than I wanted to. But anyway, please do not touch that dial. We'll be back on the other side of it.
There's a new national syndicated radio program that's sweeping the nation, and you don't want to miss it. Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali, the voice of justice for the people. The focus of Justice Watch is to provide an honest analysis and viable solutions to the criminal and social justice crisis in America and the world from a Black, brown, working class, and socially disadvantaged perspective, and to motivate listeners to be informed and part of the solution. Zulu Ali is joined by the Justice Crew, consisting of Rosa Nunez, Michael Clark, Dr. Akil Bashir, and Charito Ali to tackle the most pressing issues. Host Attorney Zulu Ali is a former police officer, U.S. Marine Corps veteran, and an award-winning trial lawyer who focuses on representing persons accused of crimes, immigrants, victims of discrimination, and persons seeking civil justice. Find out how to listen to Justice Watch with Attorney Zulu Ali at justicewatchradio.com. New Beam Pictures presents a CCM Films production documentary entitled Purpose and Freedom. Keep your hand on the plow. This emotional and strong documentary tells the story of African-American lawyer Zulu Ali seeking justice and his purpose as a lawyer while crossing paths with Araceli, an undocumented immigrant from Mexico who is seeking her freedom. Together, they help discover their purpose and freedom in each other. Watch this incredible film today from iTunes Movies, YouTube Movies, Amazon Prime, and Google Play Movies. Learn about the cast and crew, links to purchase, and more at purposeandfreedommovie.com. Purpose and Freedom. Keep your hand on the plow. Available now. Rated G.
I did not feel safe. That's why I decided to come to California, because I didn't feel safe in Mexico.
It's kind of like the system, and if you go outside the system, then it becomes a struggle.
Are you an immigrant seeking defense representation and are looking to protect your rights? Maybe someone who is experiencing an injustice or discrimination and need a lawyer you can trust? Well, that's exactly why you need the help of award-winning trial lawyer Zulu Ali. The law offices of Zulu Ali provides immigration defense representation for those seeking justice and looking to protect their rights. If you or a loved one needs professional legal advice and representation, then contact Zulu Ali. Zulu Ali's firm focuses on criminal law, family law, civil and personal injury, and international law. Zulu Ali is a former police officer and U.S. Marine, so you know you're in good hands. Serving all of California and immigration cases nationwide, representing victims and suspects at the International Criminal Court at The Hague. Call Zulu Ali today at 888-682-3049 or visit ZuluAliLaw.com.
All right, welcome back to Justice Watch with Attorney Zulu Ali and the Justice Watch crew. We're continuing with our discussion on are Black people punished for challenging the justice system. Anyway, so basically, I guess we're going to. I said a lot, I guess, for in the first two segments, but I guess we're going to go around and talk. I mean, mainly about the whole issue of trying to. I hope everybody understands what I mean by challenging the system. So as it relates to as it relates to challenging the system. And the way in which it works once you get into the criminal justice system is this. Last week we talked about low-hanging fruit, which we had a lot of people tune in for that. But at any rate, so as we talked about the whole issue of low-hanging fruit, we start talking about, well, are Black people targeted? And I think that Black people are targeted, but oftentimes the targeting is relative to the fact that we're, challenging it. It's like once you get into the system, it's like the slave catcher gets you, and then once the slave catcher gets you and puts you into this system, then they do what they do. So, but anyway, so I'm going to actually start with Rosa and then go around and kind of get a little bit of some comments on. Your thoughts on this subject, political science.
I think you're spot on when you talk about the plea arrangement and how unfair it is for people of color. We know that 97% of criminal cases are resolved by plea arrangement, right? And we know that there is racial disparities in plea bargaining outcomes, and they are especially in cases involving misdemeanors and low-level felonies. In fact, white people facing misdemeanor charges are nearly 75% more likely than black people to have all charges carrying potential imprisonment dropped, dismissed, or reduced to lesser charges. And we're talking about plea deals. 97% of the cases that get solved and go through court. White people also that are facing misdemeanor charges are 46% more likely than black people who have similar charges to be reduced. I think that there's certainly disparities in plea bargaining outcomes, and they're clearly driven in cases in which defendants have no prior conviction. In a way, I feel like race is used as a proxy for the defendant's likelihood to recidivate. And that is certainly unfair. And this is not something that is too often talked about, because we talk about, the fact that people are discriminated in general, even before going to the courts. And when they get into the court system, it's still unfair. But many people still believe in our system of courts as being just and fair to people of color. But that's not the case. And it is seen through the plea arrangement deals that are made in those court cases.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Andrea?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. My question though is, I'm sorry. My question though is, what do we do then? If the legal system is not going to help us, they just hurt us. What do? We have nowhere to turn.
Well, I think that the problem, I believe, with our community is we don't do nothing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean, I think that's where it boils down to. I mean, we have large numbers within the criminal. We keep doing the same thing.
We keep doing the same, expecting something different.
Yeah, and I think that basically, we need to. The only way that we're going to be able to deal with this criminal justice system is to be all in. And the problem, of course, is that we're not all in. I mean, even those who work within the criminal justice system have, they're scared to do anything.
Right.
So, when we got a lot of black judges, we got a lot of black prosecutors, we have a lot of black lawyers, and that they try to, we spend too much time as advocates, especially attorneys, trying to use the system as it is to get some sort of positive benefit out of it.
Right.
My attitude is that you need to change the system, not use the system. And what happens is individuals, once they get, are able to go through the process of being able to get into the system, then they basically kind of work their way in the system in a manner in which the system works. So you have to be able to, agitate. You have to be able to, stand up, do something different. And when you talk about these plea deals, going to 99% of the time, going to a black lawyer and going to the white lawyer is going to be the same thing. Having a black prosecutor and having a white prosecutor is oftentimes going to be the same thing.
Right.
Having a black judge and having a white judge is going to often be the same thing. So if we're not changing the system from within, we're not basically coming together as a community, and we spend all this time talking on social media over, frivolous things and doing YouTube videos about beef.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And talking about issues that are are unconcerning, then it's going to be the same thing. We're not willing to sacrifice.
Yeah.
Like we talked about last week. I was telling last week we were talking about, when I first got into the legal profession, I worked for a Jewish attorney who was a Hasidic Jew. And I remember saying that he was an extremely wealthy man, and he refused to buy a German-made car. He would rather drive a Bug, or he would rather drive, just a beat up car, no matter what it is. But he did that because he, was willing to sacrifice. We're willing to sell out so easy.
Right.
And many of our leaders, when we put them in certain situations, they're clear with us, but then they want to be in the board meeting.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Right.
So everybody wants to be the HNIC.
Mhm.
They don't really want to make any changes. They want to be able to say, you know what, I know Governor Newsom. He's a friend of mine.
Right.
Mhm.
You know, I know the city councilman. I know him. I
ain't gonna buck up against
Right.
you know, because I don't want to get broke.
and we're satisfied to think that we know people because we know Master in his house.
Right. Right.
So just because you can get in the Master's house means nothing for your people if you ain't saying, Master, you need to change something.
Yeah.
If you can't get them. And so that's where we are. We're happy enough to get our degrees.
Right.
We're happy enough to have PhDs. We're happy enough to have JDs. We're happy enough to have master's degrees. We're happy enough to do whatever it takes to get master's approval.
Yes.
But we're not willing to do anything to change anything for our folks.
Yeah.
So if you're getting PhDs and you're teaching at Harvard or you're teaching at Yale or and we're watching you give your commentary on CNN, you know what? I mean, that's cool. You can stand out on the front porch with Master and give me your analysis.
Right.
But that's not doing anything because you standing on the front porch giving your Master's analysis on CNN or MSNBC or Fox or whatever. That's fine. But it's not you ain't doing nothing for your folks. What are you doing for your people?
Teach.
I mean, and fine. You look at you live in a certain place. You've got millions and millions and millions of dollars, and I'm not the one that tells people how to spend their money. But why aren't we starting schools and charter schools?
Right.
Or why aren't we going into communities? Why aren't we giving scholarships? Why aren't we encouraging people to go to HBCUs? Why aren't we putting a lot of pressure on HBCUs to actually do, have curriculums that are going to be positive to us? In these schools, what are we really teaching young men and women to do about that's going to be beneficial to our community? They're not learning any of those things. There's no sacrifice. So what we're doing is we're still just doing the jig.
Yeah.
And so if you're doing, and they know, you don't think they don't know that? They don't know that when you come in there and you're trying to make them like you, it's like, I'm the head district attorney in this county. The mayor of Minneapolis, isn't that where George Floyd happened? Was he black or white?
The mayor of Minneapolis.
The chief of police of Minneapolis, was he black or white?
He was black, wasn't he?
I think
Right. So in many of these cases where many of these things are going down, you have black public officials that are in office. We have black police officers. Sometimes some of these things that happen in their community. If you own a police department, you know who's treating black people wrong in your unit, but you're not doing anything.
Scared because
you know what I mean?
Afraid of
So I'm just getting tired of my folks dropping names and trying to be the big dude on campus and trying to be the HNIC and trying to talk about what they own and all this other kind of stuff, because I can tell you that other people, like I said, and I hate to compare ourselves to other individuals, but I can say that many of those cultures, they're not really into that. The guy I worked for, and he wasn't going to do anything to jeopardize what his values as it related to him being for his people. And we'll sell some. We live the first 48.
Yeah.
As soon as they start, they don't even have to water board us.
Right.
As soon as we see the water, we start talking. So we're a race of people that have we want freedom, but we don't want to do what it takes to be free. And I understand that black people feel like this is our country, and that basically it's not about black and white, but it is. Have I went over? Okay. But anyway, see, I was going to get around the table. I didn't, but I will when I get back. Please do not touch that down. We'll be back with Justice Watch.
A nationally syndicated radio program that's sweeping the nation, and you don't want to miss it. Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali, the voice of justice for the people. The focus of Justice Watch is to provide an honest analysis and viable solutions to the
Today's
criminal
segment
and
is
social
awesome.
justice crisis in America and the world from a Black, brown, working class, and socially disadvantaged perspective, and to motivate listeners to be informed and part of the solution. Zulu Ali is joined by the Justice Crew, consisting of Rosa Nunez, Michael Clark, Dr. Akil Bashir, and Charito Ali to tackle the most pressing issues. Host Attorney Zulu Ali is a former police officer, U.S. Marine Corps veteran, and an award-winning trial lawyer who focuses on representing persons accused of crimes, immigrants, victims of discrimination, and persons seeking civil justice. Find out how to listen to Justice Watch with Attorney Zulu Ali at justicewatchradio.com. New Beam Pictures presents a CCM Films production documentary entitled Purpose and Freedom. Keep your hand on the plow. This emotional and strong documentary tells the story of African-American lawyer Zulu Ali seeking justice and his purpose as a lawyer while crossing paths with Araceli, an undocumented immigrant from Mexico who is seeking her freedom. Together, they help discover their purpose and freedom in each other. Watch this incredible film today from iTunes Movies, YouTube Movies, Amazon Prime, and Google Play Movies. Learn about the cast and crew, links to purchase, and more at purposeandfreedommovie.com. Purpose and Freedom. Keep your hand on the plow. Available now. Rated G.
I did not feel safe. That's why I decided to come to California, because I didn't feel safe in Mexico.
It's kind of like the system, and if you go outside the system, then it becomes a struggle.
Are you an immigrant seeking defense representation and are looking to protect your rights? Or maybe someone who is experiencing an injustice or discrimination and need a lawyer you can trust? Well, that's exactly why you need the help of award-winning trial lawyer Zulu Ali. The law offices of Zulu Ali provides immigration defense representation for those seeking justice and looking to protect their rights. If you or a loved one needs professional legal advice and representation, then contact Zulu Ali. Zulu Ali's firm focuses on criminal law, family law, civil and personal injury, and international law. Zulu Ali is a former police officer and U.S. Marine, so you know you're in good hands. Serving all of California and immigration cases nationwide, representing victims and suspects at the International Criminal Court at The Hague. Call Zulu Ali today at 888-682-3049 or visit ZuluAliLaw.com.
Welcome back to Justice Watch with Attorney Zulu Ali and the Justice Watch crew, where we're continuing with our discussion. Are Black people targeted or punished for challenging the system? So I'll go to you next, Don.
Well, I think there's been some excellent commentary, and yes, we're definitely targeted. I mean, the result speaks for himself. We've been targeted from day one. And anybody that doesn't want to recognize that, I don't know what to say. I'll be brief, but, I look at, from a solutionary perspective, I was fortunate to come up under a movement where we policed ourselves. Now, I'm not saying that all people, and we have a saying from the street, all skin folk ain't kinfolk. There's going to be some that we got to leave by the wayside, but I think it's time that we set up communities that we police, that we operate from our instructed law. Now, we can't get around the law of the nation, and we need to definitely change that where we can. But in the short term, we've got to stop operating under their system, control our own communities, and if that means boarding those communities off to where we can deal with the avoidance of this system, so be it. Because I'm telling you, from my perspective, I don't think they're going to change. The only way this justice system is going to change is by force, in my opinion.
That's the truth.
I just wish that everyone would see it from the way you see it from, Zulu, because I think it hits you a little bit harder. Because you take, and I just want to go back a little bit further. If you take the individuals that went and fought for this country and then came back to this country after fighting and still was made to sit at the back of the bus, or still being able to made to sit or drink from a certain water faucet, it hits those people different. For you, it hits you different because you served in the Marines, you served as a police, and now you're attorney. So you got that whole spectrum. You see it, and it hits you a little bit harder than it hits us because we just read about it and we see it sometimes in our lives. For me, an instance, I have a brother who goes to court next week, right? A charge was dropped against him against a police officer, right? Now, he came out of the hole in prison and he filed excessive force. They picked the charge back up a year later. They picked the charge back up, offered him a deal. He refused the deal, so he hadn't even went to preliminary hearing. They refused the deal and taken him to trial. So you see how the system works. And the thing about it is, go back to what you said. We have to establish our own systems and start educating our kids from the ground up. Right now, there's a big thing in certain states where they've taken stuff about slavery out of the history books, where they're taking all these things out of the history book to keep us uninformed, so our children do not grow up knowing exactly what they need to fight for and what they need to stand for. And I think that should be the big push right there, is that we need to start educate at the house, in the home as well as in the school, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to change this system, is that we educate this generation that come up to be fighters.
That's right.
I think one of the things that the biggest mistakes that I think that we made in this generation is, we made some serious mistakes. And the mistake that we made is that we believe that if we gave our children all the things that we didn't have, then we would be doing something for them. So, we talk about a lot of the economics and we talk about stuff like that, but we don't talk about values.
Right.
And I mean, I think that one of the things that your culture should encompass a significant degree of values. And oftentimes, we think that we're more educated, we think that we're more wealthy, and we think that we're better than our ancestors sometimes. But we're not. We're worse, because I would rather have my ancestors' values than modern day money any day.
That's right.
And what we do is they'll do it if when we're teaching. We thought that, look, if I get my kid out and make him bougie, send him to college, get him a good job, have an education, have a lot of money, then basically, and we've done a lot of that. But we're still talking about the same things that we're talking about back during Jim Crow and before.
Right.
The reason why is because your culture cannot be based upon superficial things.
No,
you cannot build a culture on a degree. You cannot build your culture on money. You can't build it on anything. What you have to build your culture on is values. Right. And that's really important. And when it comes to our business, like let's just say Black Wall Street. We've started businesses. We've had businesses in many cases, even before the Civil Rights Act, we had more businesses probably.
Yes.
But the problem is we have to employ each other. We don't want to go to our own business because we think that if it comes from them, it's going to be better. When we work for our own people, we act a fool. Instead of acting like, you know what I'm saying? You go in there and work for them, you're going to be yes sir, no sir. But when you work for your own people, they don't know anything. You're better than they are when you work for your own people.
Right.
So you want to act up when you're around your own folks. Then whenever you're around them, then you want to act like you back on the plantation. That's our mindset. And I think just because you got a PhD, just because you got an MD, just because you got a JD, doesn't mean you're still not a slave.
Exactly.
Because if it doesn't free you to do more for your own people, then all you've done is basically been trained.
Yep.
They've basically taken you and you need some debriefing. Yeah. Because you haven't learned anything. And that is what's going on in our community, is that we have forgotten about our values. Yeah. We've got people acting out of their own character. We got people, we've got the greater community letting men think it's okay to do things that men don't do. And I'm not even going to go into that. Yeah. Right?
True.
You know what I'm saying? Because I don't want nobody sending me no letters. You know what I mean? But at the same time, that's devastating to our communities. Right. And they don't mind putting you in a dress.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
And heels. Did you see that?
Yeah. And so, you know what I mean? So, I mean, and we talked, I'm talking about what entertainers are saying. They're saying that why is it they always have to be, we talk about Dave Chappelle, all of them talk about they always want to put you in a dress.
Right.
Right? Why?
That's right.
Exactly.
The same way that they castrated you when they hung you, it's the same thing that it's the same concept. It's the same concept when you go in, when the police are dealing with you, right? So the police, you say something slick to the police, then he wants to haul up on you and hit you in the face and beat you down. Teach you a lesson because you got a place. I want to castrate you. Then when I get the question, I'm really going to beat you. Right? Yeah. And that's the way that they want to. And so, be men. Be men in your community. Raise your son to be men. That's right. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and that comes along with there wasn't nothing wrong with those men in our communities that were janitors, that did this work or worked in the fields. There was values that we got out of those people. That's right. You know what I mean? They taught there were, there's a lot of values that I go back to that I learned that I ain't learned in no school. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I've got 2 masters, a JD, and I'm getting another doctorate degree. Mm-hmm. That means nothing. I have not yet to meet anybody more smart, more intelligent than my grandfather and my grandmother. And neither one of them passed the 8th grade. Yes. And they're smarter than any of those individuals. And they talk, if I had not learned from them, I would not be where I am today because that degree means nothing.
That's right.
That's right. And we need to change the way that we're dealing with it, because if we keep going down the same path that we're going, all they're going to do is you're just going to be a slave. I'm just trying to get my people to get off the plantation, right? That's all I'm trying to do. That's what Justice Watch is about. Get off the plantation. But anyway, get an underground railroad. All right, man. Well, thank you for tuning in for this edition of Justice Watch. We'll see you next week, same time, same place, same channel. Until that time, stay blessed.
There's a new nationally syndicated radio program that's sweeping the nation, and you don't want to miss it. Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali, the voice of justice for the people. The focus of Justice Watch is to provide an honest analysis and viable solutions to the criminal and social justice crisis in America and the world from a black, brown, working class, and socially disadvantaged perspective, and to motivate listeners to be informed and part of the solution. Zulu Ali is joined by the Justice Crew, consisting of Rosa Nunez, Michael Clark, Dr. Akil Bashir, and Charito Ali to tackle the most pressing issues. Host attorney Zulu Ali is a former police officer, U.S. Marine Corps veteran, and an award-winning trial lawyer who focuses on representing persons accused of crimes, immigrants, victims of discrimination, and persons seeking civil justice. Find out how to listen to Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali at justicewatchradio.com.
You're on board KCAA's Inland Talk Express.